whole family together. Not a single person showed up. That same evening, my daughter-in-law was posting sun-soaked photos from a cruise, every family member smiling beside her. I simply smiled back at the screen. Weeks later, when they returned, I handed her a DNA test that drained the color from her face. Stay with me to the end and drop the city you're watching from. I'd love to see how far this story travels. I spent 3 careful weeks preparing for that night. I chose the menu, filled the dining room with fresh flowers, even treated myself to a navy dress with tiny pearl buttons, the style my late husband once said made me look elegant. The table was set for 8, name cards written in my neatest script. By 6:30, every chair was still empty. I checked the clock, my phone, the calendar. Everything was correct. 7 o'clock came and went. Calls to my son went straight to voicemail. My sister, usually quick to answer, stayed silent. Candles burned to stubs. The roast cooled. The chocolate cake I'd baked that morning sat untouched. By 8, the truth settled in. No one was coming. Out of habit, I opened social media and froze. There they were. My children, grandchildren, even my sister and her husband, all on a glittering Mediterranean cruise. Caption, living our best life. So grateful for this amazing family getaway. Every smiling face was a reminder. They had planned a trip that deliberately left me behind. On my birthday, a single text arrived. Sorry, Mom. Meadow surprised us with the trip. Happy birthday. I carefully set the phone down, afraid I'd break it. I packed the cake into the fridge, turned off the oven, and put away the china, the quiet clink of plates echoing in the empty house. For the first time in my life, I felt not just forgotten, but erased. The woman in the dark window's reflection, once the family's peacemaker and memory keeper, looked smaller, almost unfamiliar, and that was only the beginning. The next morning, I knew I'd have to face the show of false concern, the polite excuses, the careful miscommunication stories, Meadow's gentle voice insisting the cruise had been booked ages ago, and there was nothing they could do. But that night, I let the ache settle in. I sensed this wasn't about a missed birthday at all. It was something colder, intentional. I didn't sleep. I lay awake, replaying every family moment from the past 5 years, seeing patterns I'd ignored. Tommy's 4th birthday. I'd arrived early, gift in hand, only for Meadow to greet me at the door with that flawless, apologetic smile. Oh, Loretta, didn't Elliot tell you? We had to move the party to tomorrow. Behind her, I heard children's laughter, saw balloons through the window. Later, Elliot sounded baffled. Tomorrow? No, Mom, it's today. Meadow must have mixed up the dates. Emma's first day of kindergarten? I double-checked the time so I could capture her big moment on camera. We're dropping her off super early, probably too early for you, Meadow had said. I went anyway. The teacher told me Emma had arrived right on schedule at 8:30. I'd missed her shy little wave. Past Christmas, 2 days before the holiday, Meadow called with a voice full of careful sympathy. Elliot's stressed with work. Could we keep dinner small this year? Just immediate family? So I spent the day alone, reheating leftovers, watching old movies. Later, my sister Ruth mentioned the huge celebration she'd seen on social media. 20 guests, neighbors, college friends, everyone, except me. Piece by piece, the puzzle formed. This wasn't a series of mix-ups. It was a strategy. By dawn, I was still awake, hands trembling from exhaustion and a new kind of fear. Coffee in hand, I scrolled through Meadow's posts from the past year, really looking this time. There she was at Tommy's school play, front row beside Elliot, that play she told me was canceled. There she was at Emma's dance recital, the practice session she said was nothing special. Photo after photo, family gatherings I never knew about. Captions full of blessed moments and precious memories. Everyone smiling like they belonged together, complete without me. I set the phone down and stared out at the garden I'd planted when Elliot was small, remembering his little hands, carefully pulling weeds. When had I lost him? When did he stop seeing me as part of his happiness?
The answer came like a flash.
When Meadow entered our lives. Before her, Elliot called twice a week. We had regular Sunday dinners. He asked my advice, shared his day, treated me as both mother and friend. After Meadow, Sunday dinner slipped to once a month. She loves planning special meals, he'd say. Then the phone calls shrank to quick holiday check-ins. Meadow never criticized me outright. That would have been obvious. Instead, she moved in quiet spaces, soft suggestions followed by silence. Your mom seems tired. Maybe we shouldn't burden her with the kids this weekend. I saw your mom at the store. She looked a little confused. It was subtle, carefully woven, and I had finally begun to see the pattern. Subtle comments had been stacking up for years. Tiny hints that I was a burden, someone to manage rather than include. The way Meadow hugged me at gatherings, just a heartbeat too long, patting my back as if I were fragile. The way she gently steered the children away when I spoke. Grandma's had a long day, sweethearts. Show Daddy your new toy instead. And Elliot, my kind, trusting son, had absorbed it all. He'd begun to look at me the same way she did. Affectionate, yes, but with a quiet pity that cut deeper than words. The phone rang, jolting me. Elliot's name lit the screen. "Hi, Mom." His voice was bright, carefree. Just wanted to say happy belated birthday. Sorry we missed it, but this trip has been incredible. Meadow really outdid herself. My chest ached. "Yes," I said carefully, I saw the photos." "Oh, good." She's been posting nonstop. The kids are having a blast. Tommy even learned to snorkel, and Emma made a new friend from Boston. You'd have loved it. Would I? Because from where I sat, it felt like no one had noticed I wasn't there. The trip was very last minute, I said. I know, right? Meadow found an amazing deal and just went for it. She's always spontaneous. That's one of the things I love about her. Spontaneous. That was his word for planning a cruise on his mother's birthday. "Everything okay, Mom?" "You sound a little off." I closed my eyes, the weight of every lost moment pressing down. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just tired. We'll get some rest. We'll plan something special when we're back. Promise." Another promise I knew Meadow would quietly undo. After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table, watching the light shift across the room. I thought about the years ahead, birthdays alone, milestones missed, family photos where my absence would look natural. For the first time since my husband died 8 years ago, I felt truly orphaned. Not by death, but by something colder, deliberate erasure. Yet beneath the ache, a sharper feeling sparked. I wasn't going to fade quietly. I had raised Elliot when his father walked out. I'd worked 2 jobs to put him through college, given up my own dreams so he could chase his. I had earned my place in this family, and I wasn't giving it up. I just needed to understand what exactly I was fighting. Tuesday morning, 1 week after that empty birthday, I was still in my robe, nursing a second cup of coffee, when the doorbell rang. Unexpected visitors were rare these days. Through the peephole stood a man I didn't know. Mid-40s, dark hair, worry lines deep across his face. Well-dressed but rumpled like he'd been traveling. His hands stayed buried in his coat pockets, eyes darting as if he wasn't sure he belonged there. I nearly ignored it. But something in his posture, like he was summoning courage, made me pause. "Can I help you?" I called through the door. "Mrs. Patterson?" His voice was careful, hesitant. "Loretta Patterson. Elliot's mother?" My chest tightened. "How do you know my son's name?" "Who's asking?" A beat of silence. Then, "My name is David Chen. I need to talk to you about Meadow." I kept the chain latched as I opened the door a crack. "What about her?" Up close, he looked even more strained. Dark circles under sleepless eyes, hands trembling slightly. "This will sound unbelievable," he said, voice low. "But I think my son might be living in your son's house." The chain felt heavy in my grip. "What are you talking about?" "Tommy," he said. The name struck me like a blow. "A 7-year-old boy," David continued. Brown hair. Small scar on his chin from a bike fall when he was 4. I stared, heart racing. Tommy, my grandson, had that exact scar. Elliot had told me every detail of Tommy's bike accident, the frantic drive to the emergency room, the tiny stitches on his chin. How could this stranger know that? "I think you'd better come in," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. David Chen sat on my couch like a man ready to bolt. I offered coffee. He shook his head, fingers locked so tightly his knuckles were white. "I don't know where to start," he said. "This will sound unbelievable." "Try me," I replied. "I've had a strange week myself." He drew a shaky breath. "Meadow and I, we were together for 2 years, before she met your son. We lived together, even talked about marriage. Then she got pregnant." My coffee cup felt suddenly heavy. I set it down carefully. "I was thrilled," David continued, his voice thick with old hurt. "I wanted to marry her, start our life. But Meadow kept delaying, said she needed time. And then one day she was just gone. All her things, everything. Like she'd never lived there." "You searched for her?" "Of course. For months. Filed a missing person report, hired a private investigator, posted everywhere. Nothing. It was like she vanished." He rubbed his face. "The investigator finally said some people just don't want to be found." A chill ran through me. What does this have to do with Tommy? 3 months ago, I was in Sacramento for a conference. During lunch, I saw them. Meadow and a little boy who looked exactly like me at that age. Same eyes, same chin, even the way he tilts his head when he's thinking. I followed them for 3 blocks, and I knew. You're saying Tommy is your son? I believe he might be. Meadow was about 2 months pregnant when she left. If she carried to term, the timing fits. David pulled out his phone and handed it to me. A photo of him as a child stared back. Dark eyes, a stubborn jaw, the same small gap between the front teeth that Tommy tries to hide when he smiles. The resemblance was undeniable. This could be coincidence, I whispered. That's what I told myself until I dug deeper. His voice hardened. I hired another investigator. Meadow Martinez isn't even her real name. Her birth name is Margaret Winters. And this isn't the first time she's disappeared when things got complicated. 2 other men dated her, and both stories end the same way. She left without a trace. One of them thinks she might have been pregnant too. The room tilted slightly beneath me. Why are you telling me this? Why now? Because I've spent 3 months watching from a distance, wondering if I had the right to disrupt a child's life based only on suspicion. Then I saw the cruise photos, your whole family laughing and smiling, and I realized something that turned my stomach. What? You weren't in a single picture. I went through all of Meadow's posts, birthdays, holidays, school events. Your son and the kids are everywhere. You? Almost invisible. Like someone is writing you out of your own family story. The words hit like a physical blow. Every missed event, every last-minute change, every polite excuse, it all snapped into place. I remember how Meadow isolated me near the end, David said quietly. She made me feel like I was the problem. Like my friends and family didn't understand. She's doing the same to Elliot. I could only whisper, I think so, and maybe to you as well. David nodded. Which means if Tommy really is my son, he isn't the only one she's hurting. He reached into his coat and pulled out a manila envelope. This is why I came today. I finally found the courage. What is it? DNA results. I managed to get a sample of Tommy's hair from his barber. Had it tested against mine? His hands trembled as he passed me the envelope. I got the results yesterday. I stared at it, afraid to touch something that could either shatter or save my family. Before I could open it, David's voice softened. I need you to know. I'm not here to take Tommy away from the only father he's ever known. I don't want to disrupt Tommy's life or cause him pain, David said quietly. But I can't stand by while Meadow manipulates and lies to everyone who cares about him, including you. What are you asking me to do? I managed. I need your help to keep him safe from whatever game she's been playing. Because if she's lied about this, Mrs. Patterson, what else has she lied about? And who's next to get hurt? I stared at the envelope in my hands, feeling the weight of the truth inside. Outside, a car door slammed and children's laughter floated down the street. Ordinary sounds of an ordinary afternoon, in a neighborhood where mothers didn't steal children and grandmothers weren't erased from family photos. But my life hadn't been ordinary for a long time. I just hadn't wanted to admit it. Mrs. Patterson, David's voice softened. Are you ready to know the truth? I pictured Tommy's bright face, the way he used to sprint toward me with arms wide before Meadow began discouraging those embraces. I thought of Emma, who barely knew me now, of Elliot, my son, slowly turned against his own mother, of the empty birthday table and the family pictures where I simply didn't exist. Yes, I whispered and opened the envelope. The DNA report spoke in cold clinical language. 99.7% probability of paternity. I read it again and again, hoping the numbers might somehow change. Tommy, the little boy whose first steps I'd cheered, whose shoes I'd helped tie, was not Elliot's child. And Elliot, my trusting son who'd named Tommy after his own grandfather, had no idea. I'm sorry, David said, watching my hands tremble. I know this is devastating. How long have you known for sure? Since yesterday, but I've suspected for months. He pulled out his phone, showing me photos taken from a distance. Tommy at the park, riding his bike, walking into school. I know it sounds intrusive, he said, but I had to be certain. We've been watching my family. I've been watching my son, David corrected gently, and trying to understand what kind of woman could build a life on a lie like this. The anger came hot and sharp, not at David, but at Meadow. Her deception was staggering. She hadn't just hidden a child's parentage. She'd built her marriage on it, using an innocent boy as the cornerstone of a life she had no right to claim. She trapped Elliot, I said, the words bitter. She got pregnant with another man's baby and used it to secure a marriage to my son. It looks that way, David agreed grimly. The timing fits. She left me about 2 months along, just starting to show. If she found someone quickly, she could claim the baby came early or was simply small. I thought back to Tommy's birth. Elliot had called me, nervous but thrilled, saying the baby arrived 3 weeks early. The doctor said everything was fine, because it was. Tommy wasn't premature at all. He was right on time for David's timeline. The pieces locked together with sickening clarity. The whirlwind romance, the quick engagement, the wedding barely 6 months after they met. What I once called true love was something else entirely. Calculated survival. She needed a stable father before the baby arrived. Someone trusting, David added quietly. Someone who'd never think to ask for a paternity test. That's Elliot, I said. He had always been honest to a fault, incapable of the kind of suspicion that would have protected him. And Meadow had turned that goodness into a weapon. There's more, David said, and his tone made my stomach clench. He handed me a folder. Photographs, documents, copies of official records. Her real name is Margaret Winters, he said. She's 34, not 31, like she told your son. Grew up in foster care. No family ties, no lasting connections. I studied a grainy yearbook photo of a teenage girl. Different hairstyle, different name, but unmistakably Meadow. Or rather Margaret, the woman who had rewritten all of our lives. The girl in the yearbook photo was unmistakably Meadow. Younger, darker hair, but the same face. Only now I saw something in her eyes I'd never noticed before. A sharp, hungry desperation. She's been married before, David said. Twice. First to a man named Robert Kim in Nevada, then to James Fletcher in Oregon. Both marriages ended in under 2 years. Both times she walked away with generous alimony. She's done this before, I whispered. The pattern never changes, David continued. She finds a man with money or stability, moves fast to secure him, then cuts him off from everyone who might see the truth. I thought of Elliot's old college friends who had quietly stopped visiting after the wedding, of how he rarely spoke about work anymore, except to mention stress, of how Meadow had become his entire social world. She's isolating him, I said. And you, David added, because you're the biggest threat. Mothers notice timelines. They remember details. She needed you not just distant, but erased. The cruelty of it stole my breath. But why go that far if Elliot already believes Tommy is his son? Because you were a witness, David said calmly. You remember when they met, when she became pregnant, when Tommy was born. If you started comparing dates, the truth might surface. She had to make you irrelevant before you became dangerous. I paced to the window where Tommy once learned to ride his bike. The same child I'd bandaged, cheered for, celebrated. Sweet, bright, and living inside a lie. What about Emma? I asked, dreading the answer. Emma is Elliot's, David said after a pause. She was born 2 years later, when Meadow and your son were definitely together. But her birth may have been calculated too. A way to keep Elliot from ever questioning Tommy's paternity, to anchor the relationship even tighter. The thought turned my stomach. 7 years of my son's life, his marriage, his children, carefully orchestrated by a woman who viewed him not as a partner, but as a resource. And she'd used innocent children as pieces on her board. Tommy doesn't know, does he? Of course not, David said. He's 7. He believes Elliot is his father and always has been. Emma only knows she has a big brother. Kids don't ask questions, adults should. I finally understood why Meadow had worked so hard to push me away. A grandmother who truly knew her grandchildren might notice the lack of family resemblance. Might wonder why certain traits didn't add up. Why tell me now, I asked. You could have demanded a paternity test, gone to court, tried for custody. Why involve me? David stared at his hands for a long moment. Because when I saw those cruise photos, it hit me. Meadow isn't just destroying my connection to my son. She's destroying yours. And if we don't act, she'll keep doing it. To Elliot, to others. What do you mean? She's already pulling Elliot away from his friends and colleagues, David said. She's teaching the kids that he's the only parent who matters. When I've watched them at the park, Tommy barely mentions you. It's as if she's erasing you from his memory. The truth landed like a physical blow. I thought of Tommy's recent distance, the way he now looked to Meadow for permission before speaking to me. I'd believed it was simple growing up. Maybe it was something far more calculated. She'll leave Elliot eventually, David said, his voice hard. Just like she left me. Just like she left her other husbands. But first she'll strip away every friend, every relative, every safety net. until he has no one left but her. And when she walks away, he'll be completely alone. I closed my eyes and pictured the path ahead if nothing changed. Elliot isolated, abandoned, finances drained if Meadows' calculations held true. The children would be pawns in a game they didn't even know they were playing. "What do you want me to do?" I asked. David rose, gathering his papers and photos. "I want you to help me protect our family, yours and mine." "Because that's what we are, Mrs. Patterson. You are Tommy's grandmother in every way that counts, even if the DNA says otherwise. I won't let Meadow erase that." He handed me a business card. "Think about it, but don't take too long. They'll be back from their cruise in a few days, and Meadow will be watching for any hint that you've become a problem. If we're going to act, it has to be soon." When the door closed behind him, I sat in the fading light, holding the DNA report and the small card. For the first time in months, the quiet house didn't feel empty. It felt like the pause before a storm. Meadow, Margaret Winters, or whatever her real name truly was, had made a critical mistake. She believed she could erase me from my own family story. But I wasn't gone yet. And now that I knew the truth, I wasn't going anywhere. 3 days later, the cruise was over. I dialed Elliot, my voice steady from countless rehearsals. "Hi, sweetheart. Could we all have dinner this weekend? I'd like to talk with you and Meadow. Something important about the future." A pause. "Is everything okay, Mom? You sound serious?" "Everything's fine. I just think it's time for a real family conversation." Another pause. Faintly, I heard Meadow's voice in the background. When Elliot returned, his tone was cautious. "Meadow wants to know what kind of conversation. She's worried you're upset about the cruise." "Tell Meadow I'm not upset," I said lightly. "I simply believe families should communicate. Saturday evening would be perfect. I'll cook. I'll check with her and call you back." The fact that my 38-year-old son needed permission to have dinner with his own mother would have been funny if it weren't so heartbreaking. I kept my voice calm. "Of course. Let me know." 2 hours later, he called back. "Saturday works? 6 o'clock. "Perfect," I replied. "I'm looking forward to seeing everyone." Friday was spent in careful preparation. David and I had met twice more, planning every word so the truth would come out in a way that protected Tommy while exposing Meadow's deception. On my counter waited a manila folder holding the DNA report, the investigator's documents, proof of Margaret Winters' real identity, her prior marriages, the timeline that made her story impossible. I cooked Elliot's favorite meal, slow braised pot roast, garlic mashed potatoes, crisp green beans, comfort food from his childhood. If this ended up being our last dinner as a family, I wanted the first moments to be alone. Saturday evening arrived gray and wet, a typical October dusk. I set the table with my best china, the same set I'd prepared for the birthday dinner 2 weeks earlier. The irony wasn't lost on me. They arrived exactly at 6. Meadow stepped in wearing a flowing cream-colored dress that made her look angelic. Hair perfectly arranged, makeup flawless. The picture of a devoted wife and mother. No one looking at her would suspect the web of deception she'd spun. Tommy burst through the doorway first, all 7-year-old energy. "Grandma Loretta. I learned to swim on the cruise. Want to see my doggy paddle?" My heart tightened as I hugged him, knowing what tonight's truth would mean for this innocent boy. "Maybe after dinner, sweetheart. Go wash your hands." Emma followed quietly, doll clutched in her small hands. At 5, she was more reserved, and lately more hesitant around me. Still, she leaned in for a quick kiss before heading to the bathroom. Elliot hugged me warmly, and for a brief moment, I could pretend this was a normal family evening. "Something smells amazing, Mom. I've missed your cooking." "You look tired," I said gently. He did, new lines around his eyes, a thinner frame. "Work's been brutal," he admitted. "The merger has everyone on edge." He glanced toward Meadow. She was already scanning the living room with quiet precision, as though cataloging every detail, searching perhaps for signs of a storm she could sense was about to break. Meadow slid in beside Elliot, her voice warm, but practiced. "I keep telling him to find a better work-life balance," she said with a bright smile. "Stress is terrible for your health. I've even suggested early retirement, so we can travel more and spend time with the kids." Early retirement at 38. Another subtle way to cut Elliot off from his career and income, making him completely dependent. I returned her smile. "How wonderful that you're thinking about the future. That's actually related to what I wanted to discuss tonight." During dinner, I kept the conversation light. The children chattered about the cruise, and Meadow played the perfect mother, cutting Tommy's meat, reminding Emma to use her napkin. But now I noticed things I'd missed before. how she interrupted when Tommy mentioned missing me, how she steered Emma away when the little girl asked why I hadn't joined them. She controlled every exchange, guiding affection and attention like a conductor. When the plates were cleared, I suggested the kids play in the living room. They should probably head home soon, Meadow said quickly. Tomorrow's a school day. We like to keep their routine consistent. This won't take long, I replied, my tone firm. And what I have to share may affect their routine quite a bit. Something flickered across her face. Fear. When the children were settled with their toys, I returned to the table. The manila folder lay beside my coffee cup like a loaded weapon. So, Elliot said, taking Meadow's hand. What did you want to talk about? I drew a steady breath. I want to talk about honesty, about family, and about knowing who we really are. Meadow's smile tightened. That's a little philosophical for dinner conversation. Is it? I don't think so. I picked up the folder and both of them tensed. I've learned some important things about our family's history, about genetics and medical records. Mom, Elliot's voice was cautious. What's in the folder? The truth. I opened it and placed the DNA results on the table. Silence fell. Elliot stared at the pages as though they might catch fire. Meadow went perfectly still, her face a careful mask. A paternity test? Elliot whispered. Why would you... How did you... The test shows you are not Tommy's biological father, I said gently. There's a 99.7% probability that another man is. A man named David Chen. The scrape of Meadow's chair against the floor was deafening. This is insane, Loretta. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but... Sit down, Margaret. The use of her real name hit like a thunderclap. She stumbled back, color draining from her face. Margaret? Elliot looked between us, confusion turning to alarm. I laid more documents on the table. Investigators' notes, marriage certificates, timelines. Her real name is Margaret Winters. She's been married twice before, each time hiding her past and walking away with generous settlements. She was involved with David Chen before she met you. She left him when she was pregnant and came looking for a new father for her child. That's not true, Meadow said, but her voice trembled. Tommy was born 7 months after you met, I continued, unwavering. You believed he was premature. He wasn't. He was right on time for David's timeline. Elliot's hands shook as he read the report. This can't be right. David Chen has been searching for his son for 7 years, I said softly. He found you 3 months ago and recognized what Meadow was doing. The same isolation tactics she used on him. Meadow backed toward the doorway, composure shattering. Elliot, please. Don't let her poison you. Think about our life, our family. Our family built on a lie, Elliot said, his voice raw. Our son who isn't even my son. He is your son in every way that matters, Meadow pleaded. You raised him. You love him. Based on a lie. Elliot slammed his hand on the table, dishes rattling. From the living room came the sound of children's laughter, innocent and bright, unaware their world was fracturing. There's more, I said quietly, sliding out the final records. She's done this before. She finds men, marries them quickly, isolates them from their families, then moves on when it suits her. You're not her first victim, Elliot. The room held its breath. Outside, the October rain tapped against the window, as if marking the end of every lie that had held our family together. You're just the most successful one, I said quietly. Elliot stared at the documents, his breathing quick and shallow. The cruise, he said suddenly. Your birthday. That wasn't a coincidence, was it? Meadow didn't answer, but her silence was enough. You planned it, he said, voice rising. You made sure Mom would be alone on her birthday while we were all together. You wanted to hurt her. I wanted to protect our family, Meadow began. From what? Elliot demanded. From my mother? From the woman who raised me and never hurt anyone? From someone who would eventually figure out the truth, I said softly. That's what this has always been about. The missed events, the last-minute changes, the quiet distance from friends and relatives. She needed to isolate you before you started asking questions she couldn't answer. Elliot turned to his wife, the woman who wasn't who she claimed to be. Is any of it real? Do you love me at all, or was I just convenient? For the first time since I'd known her, Meadow had no reply. No charm, no quick deflection, just silence. From the living room came Tommy's bright voice. Daddy, can we have ice cream? Elliot closed his eyes, a single tear slipping down his cheek. What do I tell them? He whispered. We'll figure it out, I said, reaching for his hand. Together, as a family. Tommy is still your son in every way that matters. That will never change. But he also has a biological father who loves him and wants to be part of his life. Handled carefully, that can be a good thing. Meadow turned toward the door. "Margaret," I called. She stopped but didn't turn. "David isn't going to disappear this time." "And neither am I. If you try to run with the children or twist this to protect yourself, we'll stop you. Your days of controlling this family are over." She walked out without a word, leaving only the sound of children laughing and the wreckage of 7 years of lies. 6 months later, the house smelled of roasted chicken and cinnamon apples. I was in the kitchen finishing Sunday dinner when the front door opened. "Grandma, we brought dessert," Tommy shouted, racing in with a bakery box, nearly too big for him to carry. Emma followed, careful with her steps, holding a small bouquet of yellow daisies. "These are for you," she said shyly. "Daddy said yellow is your favorite." I knelt to accept the flowers, pulling her into a hug she no longer hesitated to return. "They're perfect, sweetheart." "Thank you." Elliot appeared in the doorway, looking healthier than he had in years. The stress lines had softened. The weight he'd lost during those final months with Meadow was back. Behind him stood David, still a little tentative, but slowly becoming part of our complicated new family. "Something smells incredible," Elliot said, kissing my cheek. "Is that your famous apple pie?" "Tommy requested it," I said, ruffling the boy's hair, "along with mashed potatoes and that herbed chicken you both love." Tommy's eyes lit up. "Yes, my favorite, just like Daddy's." The easy way he called Elliot Daddy, and David Daddy Dave, still took getting used to, but the children had adapted with the quiet resilience only kids seem to have. Emma simply accepted that her brother had 2 fathers, the same way some friends had 2 houses. David set a bottle of wine on the counter, moving comfortably now in what had once been Meadow's domain. "How can I help?" "We can set the table," I said, smiling as the house filled with the sounds of a family. A real family, finally whole again. "The good china's in the dining room cabinet," I said as David set the table. It had taken months to reach this point, months of therapy sessions, patient talks with the children, and quiet legal steps that ended with Meadow's voluntary relinquishment of custody in exchange for avoiding fraud charges. She vanished once more, just as she had from David's life 7 years earlier, but this time she left the children behind. The transition was anything but simple. Tommy was confused and heartbroken by his mother's sudden absence. Emma grew clingy, afraid more people she loved might disappear. There were tears, restless nights, and endless questions, but there was also healing. Elliot moved back into the house he'd once shared with Meadow, and everything felt lighter. The tension of secrets was gone. David rented an apartment 10 minutes away, close enough for daily life, far enough to give everyone breathing room. "Grandma," Tommy whispered, tugging at my apron. "Can I tell you a secret?" I knelt beside him. "Always." He cupped his hands around my ear. "I'm glad you found Daddy Dave. Now I have the most daddies of anyone in my class." My heart swelled for this resilient boy who had turned a complicated past into a badge of pride. "I'm glad too, sweetheart," I said. He added softly, "And I'm glad Mommy Meadow went away." She was always mad. It broke my heart that a 7-year-old had sensed so much tension, yet it confirmed we'd made the right choices. Children notice more than we realize. Dinner that night flowed easily. Tommy boasted about his first soccer goal. Emma described her new dance class. The adults talked like the family we had become. Unconventional, but real, in a way Meadow's carefully staged version had never been. As we cleared plates, Elliot said quietly, "The divorce is final. Papers came through yesterday." "How do you feel?" I asked. He watched Tommy help David load the dishwasher. "Relieved. Grateful it's over without hurting the kids more. I regret not seeing the truth sooner, but not ending the marriage." I squeezed his shoulder. "Trusting someone you love isn't a flaw, Elliot. It's simply human." David joined us, drying his hands. "Any word from her?" he asked. "Nothing," Elliot said. "Her lawyer says she wants no contact. No calls, no visits." "That's probably for the best," I said. Still amazed a mother could walk away so completely. At least the children could heal without fearing another disruption. Later, after the kids fell asleep watching a movie, 3 of us sat at the kitchen table with coffee and leftover pie. My favorite time of day now. Soft lamplight, quiet voices, shared plans for the future. "I've been thinking," David began, stirring his coffee. "It's about Tommy's last name." Elliot looked up. "What about it?" "He's been Patterson his whole life." "That's his identity, his school records. I don't want to change that." David hesitated, then continued. "But I wondered if I could share it too, formally. David Patterson Chen. So Tommy and I would share part of a name, while keeping the connection to you and your family." The thoughtfulness of it caught me off guard. My eyes filled with tears. Elliot reached across the table and clasped David's hand. "That would mean a lot," he said, voice thick with emotion. In that quiet kitchen, with coffee cooling and children sleeping, our new family felt whole. Not the family Meadow once tried to control, but the one we chose and built together. "You'd really do that?" I asked. "I want Tommy to know that families can be complicated without being broken," David said. "I want him to understand that loving someone doesn't mean you have to choose sides or pretend other relationships don't matter." Elliot reached across the table and shook David's hand. "I think that's perfect." As the evening wound down and David prepared to take the children to his apartment for their weekly overnight stay, I pulled him aside. "Thank you," I said quietly. "For what?" "For saving my family, for having the courage to tell me the truth when it would have been easier to disappear again." David watched Tommy gather his backpack and favorite stuffed animal. "You know what I realized that day I came to your door? I wasn't just losing my son. You were losing your family, too. Meadow was taking all of us away, piece by piece. But we stopped her." "We did," I agreed. He smiled, and for the first time since I'd met him, it reached his eyes. "Look what we built instead." I glanced around my home. Children's artwork taped to the refrigerator, Emma's sweater draped over a chair, family photos that now included David and told the true story of who we were. It wasn't the family I'd imagined when Elliot first married, but it was infinitely more genuine than the performance Meadow had tried to stage. After everyone left, I sat with a cup of tea, reflecting on how drastically life had changed since that lonely birthday 6 months earlier. The house that once felt like a tomb now hummed with life. Children's laughter, David's thoughtful questions about traditions, Elliot's calm voice discussing future plans. My phone buzzed with a text from Elliot. "Thanks for dinner, Mom. The kids are asking if we can do this every Sunday." I told them that was up to Grandma. I typed back, "Every Sunday. Sounds perfect. This is what families do." His reply came quickly. "Yes, this is what real families do." I set the phone aside and looked at the framed photo from last month's zoo trip. All 5 of us crowded in front of the elephant enclosure, Tommy on David's shoulders, Emma holding my hand, Elliot with one arm around me and the other around David, grinning like he'd finally remembered what happiness feels like. We looked like what we truly were, a family broken apart and rebuilt stronger and more honest than before. It wasn't conventional, but it was real. Not perfect, but true. The house settled into evening quiet, full of possibilities and of the love Meadow had tried and failed to erase. I thought my 65th birthday marked the end of my place in the family. Instead, it began a new chapter where love mattered more than appearances, where being a grandmother meant protecting the people you cherish, even from their own mother. Tomorrow would bring the usual rhythm: Tommy's soccer practice, Emma's dance class, David picking up Tommy while Elliot took Emma, everyone ending the day here for homework and dinner, a routine that flowed from care, not control. Somewhere out there, Meadow was likely spinning another identity, crafting another story, searching for another family to manipulate. But she'd left behind something she could never reclaim: the love between people who chose to fight for one another instead of giving up. In a strange way, she'd shown us exactly what we didn't want to be, and helped us become who we were meant to be. For that, I suppose I owed her a twisted kind of gratitude. Mostly, though, I felt only sorrow for her. She'd had a real family within her grasp, flawed and complicated, but genuine, and she threw it away for the hollow satisfaction of control. After months of feeling like a ghost in my own life, I was finally home. Now I'm curious about you, the ones listening to my story. What would you have done in my place? Have you ever faced something similar? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read everyone. And before you go, check the final screen for 2 more of our channel's favorite stories. They just might surprise you.